All right, we are back in the Fireside PM podcast and live stream with Matt Schlegel, who is not only the author of a very interesting book about teamwork and how teams work together, but also a neighbor of mine. So it's so fun to see you in different circumstances. Usually we're playing poker and just talking about movies and stuff.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so we should do a whole podcast on where you learned to play poker. You're very good.
Well, why don't we start with a little bit of your background, Matt? What's your journey been like? How did you become a book author? How did you get to that point?
Oh my goodness. How far back do I go?
As far as you want, man. People
Okay,
love to
well,
hear about people's journeys.
yeah. So, I love science. My heart is in science. I grew up building radios and I'm a ham radio operator. I just love electronics. I knew by the time I was 12 years old I wanted to be an electrical engineer. I feel very blessed that way. A lot of young people don't know what they want to do when they're that young, and I
Yeah.
knew what I wanted to do. And so I just pursued that and became an electrical engineer. And I ended up, working at a company that made radios. The first radio I worked on was one of the first radios for terrestrial digital TV down in San Diego
Mm.
at a company called General Instrument. And I went through my career and just enjoyed being in electronics. I got to a point where one day my boss came to me and said, "Hey, Matt, we want you to, manage a team." And I said, "Well, why do you want me to manage a team? I know nothing about managing teams. I only know about managing electrons." And he said, "Don't worry, you'll be fine." Well, I wasn't fine. I was very worried. And, if you know my Enneagram type, which is type 6, you'll know we worry.
Mm.
So I did what, I always do when I'm put into a situation that I'm a little uncertain about. I just start to read everything I can get my hands on. And, I want to, do the best I can at, being a leader of a team. And on that course, I discovered a lot of different tools that leaders use to help us understand the interactions between team members and how we can more effectively communicate with our team members. And one of those systems that I came across was called the Enneagram. And the Enneagram, describes 9 distinct types of people. And by the time I came across the Enneagram, I had already been exposed to Myers-Briggs and DISC and Strength Finders and blah, 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 blah. All these different systems. And, and as an engineer, I always can go in and poke holes in them and find the flaws and all that. And no matter how much I poked at the Enneagram, it's like, oh, this is really good. It was the best system that I'd ever come across. And it was really effective, first and foremost, at helping me understand myself. I had never come across a system that just knew me so well
Mm.
and knew what made me tick and helped me understand myself in ways that were far beyond anything I had ever understood. And then I'm like, oh, okay, let's play around with this some more,
Mm.
and then I start to use it with my friends and family. And there's this one little section on one website where you say, if you're a type 6 and you're married with a type 5, then what does that relationship look like? And it goes through the whole thing. I'm like, how do they know? So, I was pretty much hooked at that point. And I started to, use it to help my teammates, better relate to one another, and help use it to start to describe, like any kind of conflicts that would arise, or why people, were approaching a problem the way they approached it versus all that, all really good stuff, and great for understanding. And and if you go and you look at the Enneagram literature, there are just millions of books, right? So just to answer your question, why did I write a book about it? What did I bring new that I thought, okay, I need to share this new thing that isn't already out there in the world?
Yeah.
And it happened when my engineering brain asked, why are the Enneagram types numbers? Why aren't they letters or colors or animals or stars or, any other? And it turns out that there is a reason why they are numbers. And it's because that is the exact specific order in which each of those human personality dynamics appear in human problem solving. So it is literally the canonical human problem solving system with a distinct personality style associated with each specific step in the problem solving process. And when I had that epiphany, I was like, oh, this is amazing. And so I was working at a company when I had this epiphany, and it was right after they had gone through an M&A, and they were trying to knit together two distinct cultures. One, they even called themselves boot camp versus peace camp or something. I can't remember exactly. A Woodstock versus boot camp. That was what they called themselves. So it's like very distinct cultures trying to work together and not working together. In fact, the reason why they brought me in was because I wasn't from either of those cultures, and they wanted me to kind of mediate. And so now I had this tool, and I wanted to try it out. And I started to use it, and I would, bring together cross-functional leaders and just have them go through each one of these steps. And the way I did it was I'd get everybody together for lunch once a week, and we'd do step 1. And then bring them together again in step 2. And I did that with this group of cross-functional leaders, and they ended up, not only solving the big dispute that they were having, but they learned how to work better together. And then after we finished one thing, they said, oh, there's this other thing we need to work on. Let's work on that one. And so we did it again. And again, I think I went through 6 rounds with that group, solving different problems that they were having at, interacting with one another, and solving some big problem that the company had that we needed to overcome in order to move forward. So I cut my teeth in that environment using the process. And then, I decided, okay, I'll go and just start consulting in this. And I started consulting just using this methodology I developed. And then it occurred to me, I need to actually, because nobody has ever used the Enneagram in this specific way, I'll write a book about it. And that's what got me to the book.
So where did the Enneagrams come from? How did they get produced in the first place?
Right. And this is also a fascinating thing because most of the systems that we know are pretty recent inventions. And the Enneagram is not a recent invention. It has roots back 2000 years. So this is really based in ancient wisdom that has come forward to us. There was a Russian philosopher named Gurdjieff who was studying ancient, like Middle Eastern traditions, and he is the one who introduced the Enneagram into Western thinking. And then some psychologists in the 50s, Oscar Achazo, I think, is one of the first one who really took it and then put and developed the Enneagram, or excuse me, the personality system that we're all familiar with. And then there was another couple of authors, Riso, Hudson. They developed it even more and wrote a lot of books about it. So that's how it came to be, well known lately in the last few decades. But it has roots back a couple thousand years now.
Now, do you think when they were documenting it, especially in the 50s and maybe making it a little bit more structured and formal, did they order it in that manner on
Oh, it was
purpose?
already ordered that way. The
Yeah.
Enneagram, so gram is diagram, so it's a picture.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the Enneagram, it's a circle with the 9 points around it. It kind of looks like a clock, except for 9 is at the top, and then
Ah,
all the way around. And then there is a somewhat elaborate group of lines in the middle of of that circle that describe the relationship between the different numbers, and also how any one thank you, yeah, so how any one type can move around. And those lines in the middle, they're called lines of integration and disintegration. So the way, so I'm a 6. So when I go and the lines, it's funny here because the order of the lines, it's usually the other way. It's usually in the line of integration. So
okay.
I integrate towards a 9.
Okay.
So when I'm calm and stress free, I start to look more like the peacemaker. But
Uh-huh.
when I get stressed out, I get like hyper active and try to, get stuff done. And I start to look like that achiever 3. Even though I'm a 6, depending on my stress levels, I can look like that 9 or that 3. And each one of the Enneagram types has those 2 dynamics that, they're connected to, one or the other. So like a 7 would, when they, get stressed out, they start looking like the perfectionist 1. And when they are calm, they start looking like the calm, quiet 5. Yeah, so this doesn't have the arrows in it, but you can see how the 7 is connected to
Mm-hmm.
the 1 and 5. And each one of those types is connected to 2 different other types. And that was really helpful for me to understand how, my behaviors can change depending on my stress level.
Hmm.
And also it kind of gives you a guide. And this is one of the chapters in my book, it's like, it gives you a guide as a leader of, what are your most healthy behaviors? And what the Enneagram says for a 6 is the most healthy behaviors for me are the peacemaker.
Hmm.
And it's funny too, because if you see people who are more advanced in their careers, I've observed that they often take roles along their path of integration.
Oh, Matt, I can't hear you anymore. Are you still speaking?
Oh, yeah, I'm still talking.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. I just took a pause to see if you had any questions.
Yeah, I do have a question. So I wanted to follow up. Like, let's say the achiever, that's connected to the peacemaker and loyalist at the same time. And you were saying the loyalist sort of in the ideal scenario kind of connects with the peacemaker side of themselves. And when they're stressed out, like, how would I interpret this if you're an achiever?
So the achiever, so that's the type 3. When
Mm-hmm.
they are in their calm state, they
Right.
start taking on the healthy traits of that loyalist 6.
Aha.
And then when they get stressed out, they can take on more of the unhealthy traits of
Mm.
the peacemaker, which is more retreating. So, like for
Interesting.
the achiever,
Yeah.
failure is not an option. And so if they sniff any sense of, oh my God, this might not work out, they're out.
Yeah.
They're going to bail. So, and that's kind of that retreating behavior is what the peacemaker will also do if they sense that there's going to be too much conflict. Then they will back away. So they both back away. They just back away for different reasons.
Yeah. So
Um,
interesting. Matt,
yes,
I've got to ask you, as a man with an engineering degree, a man of
yeah,
science,
yeah,
some people could look at this and say, like, well, this has a little bit of like a horoscope vibe to it.
yes,
What is
exactly,
your response to people who kind of look a little skeptically at this stuff?
right. And and me too, right? I
Yeah.
always look at this stuff very skeptically, and so after using it for a while,
Mm-hmm.
I came to the conclusion that there must be something innate about our brain
Mm-hmm.
that is driving these 9 modalities. And so I got it in me to figure that out. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to know why there are these 9 types.
Yeah.
What is it about our brains that makes us go into these 9 different modalities?
Mm-hmm.
And so I started to research it, and thankfully I found that somebody else had already done it.
All right. What did they find?
So his name is Peter Savage, and he's a brilliant Stanford law grad who was on an Enneagram journey like I did, ended up with the exact same question, and he does a lot of research in his work, and so he just started reading all the like neuroscience papers he could get his hands on, and he narrowed down the distinct behaviors of the Enneagram of the 9 types to 2 parts of the brain. And he developed a model that is just mind-blowingly simple and really explains so much about how the Enneagram works. And the 2 parts of the brain are, first, the amygdala, and we're all familiar with the amygdala, right? It's our
Mm-hmm.
fight or flight processor. And so of course the amygdala, the fight or flight processor, is going to be a very important part of what underlies our personality, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the other part is the prefrontal cortex. And this ends up being more or less our optimism pessimism processor, whether we see the glass half full or glass empty,
Mm-hmm.
or there's a nut up in the tree, I'm gonna go get that nut, versus there's a nut up in the tree, but if I go up there I might break my leg, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's what your prefrontal cortex does. And Tom, are you? I can't remember. Are you right-handed or left-handed?
I am right-handed.
Okay. Now, do you know why you're right-handed?
No, but I know it is more common than being left-handed.
Right. But you're right-handed because your left motor cortex that controls the right side of your body is dominant over the right motor cortex. So
Okay.
we have a bicameral brain, and we have you can be dominant on the left side or you can be dominant on the right side, but there's different parts of the brain, so you can have these different dominants, right and left.
Mm-hmm.
And so the amygdala isn't just one, it's actually, there's a right amygdala and a left amygdala. So you can be right amygdala dominant, left amygdala dominant, or you can be ambiguated. So that's would be, for handedness, it's called ambidextrous,
Mm-hmm.
but you can be ambiguated on the amygdala too. And then for the prefrontal cortex, right dominant, left dominant, or ambiguated. 3 times 3. Isn't that? So it's just the combinations of those different
Oh,
dominances.
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so he wrote a book about that.
Wow.
One of the things that, and I met him, and we became very good friends. And one of the things that we want to do is actually scientifically prove this model at some point, get somebody who has access to an fMRI, and we can know their Enneagram type, and we can, run them through that, and we can see the dominances so that we can actually prove this. We haven't done that step yet. So it's still kind of at the, hypothesis level, but it's a very elegant hypothesis.
And it sounds like one of the innovations that you uncovered or new insights was not only should we know what type we are, but you were using that framework as a problem solving processing kind of tool.
Right.
Is that fair that you were kind of unpacking problems in the order of these types, and it was successful, it sounds like. I guess
Right.
that, yeah.
So yeah. So here's what happened. So there's a lot of layers to this, right? So
Okay.
one, there's the personality layer, and Enneagram is great at doing that.
Uh-huh.
Um, but then there's this other thing, a way of using it to get teams to solve problems effectively.
Yeah.
And when I work with a team to solve some big challenging problem, I don't need to know their Enneagram type. I don't. I'll preface our initiative and just say, look at this is based on a thing called the Enneagram. You don't need to know the Enneagram. You don't need to know your Enneagram type. I'm just going to take you through this process, and we'll solve the problem.
Hmm.
And so then I just start doing this step by step, and I describe this in the book, how I take teams step by step through this process to solve problems. And the interesting thing is, as you go through this process, your team is going to respond different ways to the different steps,
Mm-hmm.
depending on the composition of the team, the Enneagram type composition. So, even though I don't test people, I'm so familiar with the Enneagram now and people's styles, that I can see it all play out, right? And I can see like, okay, we're coming up on, step 5, and there's not one step 5 in the room, so it's going to be a little more difficult. So we're going to have to like work a little harder in this step, or we'll get, to step 6, and actually, step 5. There's actually words for these. Like when you get too many 5s on your team, so you start off with 1. Okay, we define the problem, figure out who needs to be involved, come up with some ideas, pick some good ideas, and then you get to step 5 where you analyze them. And then if you just have a group of 5s, that's all they'll just get stuck there. It's called paralysis by analysis.
Yeah.
That's literally the name for a team that has too many 5s.
I think I've seen that in previous experiences.
Right.
Yeah.
So as I'm facilitating this and I'm looking at the team composition, I can see where the team is going to do really well. Like they're going to do great at step 5, but then it's always, everybody wants to play to their strengths. So getting off of their strength and moving to the next step is the work of the facilitator. And that's the nice thing about having the framework. Is like, okay, all you 5s, we're going to spend 1 week on this, and then we're moving to step 6, and then you move them on. And you just, one time I was working with a team that had a type 1. So step 1 in problem solving is, defining the problem. And 1s are the type of person who says, hey, that's not right. It shouldn't be like that. It should be like this. And they'll have a list of all the problems. Problem. Okay. That's their strength. They can very clearly tell you what the problem is. So then you move on to step 2. Where does that leave the step 1, type 1? Right? They want to keep talking about the problem because that's what they love to do. So you have to like very gently, help them say, okay, I think we captured that idea. We captured that problem. It's right here, on the flip chart, right? That's what you said, right? Okay, so let's move on. Right. And, you just got to keep moving people beyond what they want to keep talking about.
Matt, can I ask you, do you find that high performing teams have all 9 types represented, or are there certain like portfolios that tend to deliver the best performance?
Yes. So the odds of you having all 9 types are astronomically small. So, you do not need all 9 types. And in fact, having all 9 types, if you're solving big problems and you want to do a really good job, recruit a team and ensure that you have all 9 types. But if you're, trying to move fast and get stuff done, you can do it with smaller teams. And there are groups of teams that work super well together. And I talk about this in a chapter of my book. I call them work team triads, and it's groups of 3. And so you get, say, the type 1, the type 4, and the type 7. They work really well together. The type 2, the type 5, the type 8, they work really well together. The type 3, the type 6, and the type 9, they work really well together. And when I was working at companies, I would see this in action. I would just see how people would like naturally want to work together, and I would know their Enneagram types. And I go, oh, this is This is it in action. And then the type of work each one of those groups wants to do is very different. So
Mm,
depending on what you want to do,
yeah.
you will want to recruit, a specific group. And so these work team triads, I call them the startup triad, the industrious triad, and the systematizing triad. So
Mm,
if you're just trying to do something, from scratch, invent something out of the blue, then you want the 1, the 4, and the 7.
mhm.
If you want to take some idea that came out of that initial flurry of innovation and really make it explode, then you turn to the industrious triad, the 2, the 5, and the 8.
Hmm.
And then if that is so successful and you want to repeat it, then that's when you turn to the 3, 6, and 9 systematizing triad, and they will systematize that and just make it repeatable and repeatable and repeatable. So you see, in fact, this when I started, I was telling you this was a merger of 2 companies,
Mhm.
and the 2 companies, the Woodstock
Yeah,
was the startup triad. It was a
right.
147. And the boot camp was the 258 culture.
Mm,
It was the
mhm.
258 culture was led by an 8, and the Woodstock culture was led by a 7. But that boot camp culture had become a little stagnant, and they wanted to acquire
Yeah.
that startup culture to re-energize it. And so you can even see this at a corporate level, how these dynamics play out.
So I have seen the Myers-Briggs stuff when I was in school,
Yeah,
and then at work, I've seen Myers-Briggs and, like, the color, like, "What color are you?" kinda thing. But I
disc is
haven't seen.
probably
Yeah. I have not seen the Enneagram stuff. I wonder, why do you think it's not more, um, common? It seems so interesting.
I I don't know. I can't tell you for sure. Um, the cynical side of me says that Enneagram is essentially open source. And, if you want to, create something and copyright it and, have propriety over it and sell it
Mm,
to
brand
somebody
it.
and promote
Yeah.
it, then you need to like invent something that, is differentiated from the Enneagram, because the Enneagram predates all of this stuff. So essentially it's an open source human operating system that you can tap into. So that would be one reason maybe why that it hasn't
Hmm.
been adopted in more corporate settings.
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit, Matt. I know we're a little over time, but I'd love to go for a couple more minutes. What advice would you have for people listening to this who are working on teams and they're like, "Wow, there might be something to this." Like, what steps could they actually take to benefit from these insights?
Yeah, so when I wrote my book, the persona that I had in my mind was a project manager
Mm-hmm.
who has to manage cross-functional teams. And then I also had just a CEO, or a
Mm-hmm.
division VP who
Yeah.
has also has to manage cross-functional teams and get them to work well together. And and always, I think the starting point. I when young people come to me and say, what's some advice, what would you recommend that I study? First and foremost, I would say become familiar with the Enneagram.
Hmm.
Understand your own Enneagram type, because it will help you understand what makes you tick. It will help you understand how you're interacting with all of those around you. And it will just help you become more effective at in your relationships. You would just have much better relationships, no matter what you're trying to do, whether personal, professional, and then as a leadership tool, then it really helps you understand, who's going to be great at what, right? And when you start to, break down the different functions of your company or your team, you'll realize, oh, having that, even if they're not a type 5, but somebody who loves doing type 5 stuff, like analysis, you know, then let's have them focus on that. Let's not try to get a type 7 to do type 5 stuff, because they'll get bored in 2 days and want to move on, and they'll never
Mhm.
get anything done. You put a 5 on it and they'll just spend all the time in the world working on it. And just appreciating that, you have all of these different styles, and depending on what you're trying to accomplish, you can tap into that. So that's what I found, very valuable as a leader, to just know who is going to be great at what, and who's going to be happy doing it. Because if you can give somebody they just love doing and they're good at and they're happy doing it, they'll do it all day long without complaining. So I think that was one of the big epiphanies for me as a leader.
So I see that there's the book that's available on Amazon, and I'm sure other places where people buy books. Um, do you also do consulting still for companies? Like, how does that work?
I Yeah, I do. Yeah. So, uh, I do like Enneagram workshops. So some people just want to know the Enneagram, and so I will facilitate Enneagram workshops and team building workshops and team effectiveness workshops. I'm associated with a group called Silicon Valley Alliances. And I provide the Enneagram dynamic to that group, and we can provide a number of different services through that. And then for companies that have a challenge, and it's usually like like the type of people who really seem to appreciate my teamwork approach are like a CEO who is very focused outbound, and they're hearing problems from customers
Mm.
that they want the team to address. They go back to the team and say, hey, we got this problem, do something about it. And the team says, oh, okay. And then the CEO is still focused outbound, not inbound. And everybody starts saying, well, that's your problem. No, that's your problem. No, that's your problem. And then they just start pointing fingers at each other because they don't have the tools to work together, collaboratively and cross-functionally. They're working in the business, not on the business. You know what I mean?
Mhm,
So
mhm.
um, when that kind of persists for a while, then the CEO will say, Matt, come in and work with my team. And then I will go and work with the team and get them to realize that, no, it's not, that problem or that problem or that. It's like, you all have the same problem. It's this problem. And get them to solve it together.
Do you I could see your work being helpful for kind of rebalancing portfolios of teams when you're trying to figure out how to the composition of a team.
Hmm.
Um, if you found certain combinations to be very effective, I'm guessing you probably also found some combinations that are really problematic. Um,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, and sometimes when I work with teams, one of the outcomes is, just like I was saying earlier, we'll find that the reason why this problem is persisting is
Mhm.
because you are missing a certain dynamic on your
Mhm.
team that
Mhm.
would be the perfect fit for dealing with that.
Yeah.
And because that dynamic isn't there, it's not getting done. And so it may turn into, okay, we need to restructure the teams a little bit. We may need to hire somebody to
Mhm.
plug that hole, and then and just get things flowing again. And that is, it's often, in more than one case, it's that usually is what happens, is that the reason why it's not getting solved is because they just don't have the right person in the right place.
Yeah. Love it. Matt, how can people learn more about your work and get in touch with you?
Oh yeah, thank you. So website is evolutionaryteams.com,
Mhm.
and you can find all my contact information there. Love to get your feedback, and welcome a conversation. You can tell I love talking about this stuff. I can talk about it all day long.
It's been great. And I'm definitely going to do a self-assessment. Now I might ask my wife to do one too, just to see if we can
Oh
understand
yeah,
maybe that affects our dynamics.
right, right. And
I love
and
it.
then you can use it at poker.
Yes, yes,
Now
yes.
that you know I'm a 6.
I'll need a little cheat sheet of, you'll have to tell me what everybody's numbers are, and we'll hopefully be able to
Yeah,
get better outcomes.
once you know their Enneagram type, it's easy to poke their buttons, Tom.
I love it, Matt. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and really appreciate you sharing your knowledge. And I'll put links to your book and website in the description below for people watching on replay.
All right. Thank you so much, Tom. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Take care, Matt. Bye.
Bye.
All right, Matt Schlegel. Some quick comments before we wrap up, team. First of all, the one thing that came to mind was, how when you're hiring for roles on your team, and we often will say, oh, wow, we don't need another ideas person, or we don't need another super technical kind of operational person, or we don't need another, you know, um, execution person. We need more of an ideas person, or whatever it is, the opposite. And maybe these enneagrams kind of are a little bit more of a structured and comprehensive uh, framework to understand, like, oh, there's probably more than just ideas people and execution people or technical people and customer people or whatever. Um, so yeah, I'll have to look into it. I'll be curious. Let me know in the comments if you have seen some of these enneagram types being used at your work. Um, it definitely is intriguing. And I think the other thing that's kind of cool about Matt's approach is not only knowing what type you are, but working through a problem as a diverse team, moving through all of the types, kind of looking at a problem from a variety of perspectives. I could imagine that would yield not only a more fulsome understanding of the problem, but also gives the team a real opportunity for everybody on the team to kind of lean into their strengths and also go into their areas of less comfort. So yeah, super cool. I don't have anything else to share with you all. The normal. I have some classes on Maven. You can check it out, maven.com/Tom L. You can hit me up for PM coaching. I've been working with a few companies lately. And then I'm also working on incubating a new idea around customer research and customer feedback acquisition and analysis. And I'm actually doing some pilots to test some assumptions around using AI to help understand your customers better. So if you're a PM and you have even just a few $100 of budget for respondent incentives, let me know. I'd be happy to conduct maybe 5 or 6 customer interviews for you and then produce a report that usually takes about a week or less, and hopefully helps you make better product decisions. But other than that, I hope everybody's having a great day. And if you appreciate this kind of content, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And check out my Substack, which is what the hell is the address? I think if you just Google Fireside PM Substack, it should come up. Maybe it doesn't actually. Hold on. Where the hell is it? Oh, maybe Tom Leung Substack. Let's see. Tom Leung Substack. Yeah. Okay. So the address is tomleung.substack.com. And what that has is it has basically I write posts aided by AI that help you summarize all the takeaways from these podcasts and live streams into like a 5-minute read. So if that's something that you think would be useful to you, go ahead and check it out. I'm going to put the address on the screen. There it is, tomleung.substack.com. And it's good stuff. I publish once a week, sometimes twice a week. And I'm starting with some of the kind of greatest hits from Fireside PM Pod. And I'm sure Matt's interview will show up there, as well as many others. So check it out, and hope you all having a great day. Let's get back to work.